the programme. Another collision between China and the Philippines after they had had a provisional agreement over other parts of the disputed South China Sea. They seem to be at loggerheads yet again.
Yeah, exactly. There was a fragile truce after an interim agreement was reached over the second Thomas Shoal, another contested land feature not too far away from the latest incident, where the latest incident happened. But actually last week, there was another incident in the Scarborough Shoal, another disputed area where a Chinese fighter jet intimidated a Filipino patrol aircraft. And then now we have this incident whereby not one, but two Filipino vessels were allegedly hit by Chinese counterparts. The understanding, at least in Manila and from officials, and I was in the press conference when this broke out and Philippine top officials were making their official statements, the understanding here is that China is trying to remind the Philippines who's the big boss. They're trying to remind the Philippines of the preponderance of force they have and how they can squeeze the Philippines in different parts of the South China Sea, even if the Philippines may get its way here and there, including in the second Thomas Shoal so far.
Yeah, it's not just about the Philippines, though, is it? I mean, it raises the stakes, and one wonders whether it actually draws in the regional neighbours like Brunei, certainly in this particular case, and also Malaysia.
Yeah, there are two aspects to this. So on one hand, I think China is worried that the Philippines may set a precedence or inspire the Vietnams and Malaysias, or even Indonesia, which is not a direct claimant in the South China Sea, but has overlapping claims to China in the Natuna areas, that they may do the same. You know, China has the biggest fleet in the world, a huge militia force. But if all of these ASEAN countries do the same thing that the Philippines is doing, then even China will run out of vessels to intimidate smaller countries. But the other element is the United States. The Philippines has a mutual defense treaty with the United States, and that's why China doesn't use armed attack. This is a form of a gray zone attack by China so far.
Yeah, you take the words right out of my mouth. I was going to bring the Americans into this just in a moment, but let me just ask you this question first. Why does China then continue to insist on this area of water that is theirs when it is at least 808 miles, that's 1,300 kilometres, from the nearest part of Chinese mainland, which is Hainan Island?
Well, I mean, we have whole books we have written whole books about this, but a simple version of this is that China, modern China, has many interests in the area, the energy resources, the fishery resources, but also since the 1990s, China has introduced this patriotic education program, which tries to create the sense of a great rising China. And unfortunately, an offshoot of that are this kind of preposterous claims that is covering 85% of the entire South China Sea basin, which, by the way, is an international water. That's why China has these problems with multiple countries. But the genesis of that is actually during the fall of the Chinese Empire in the early 20th century, and actually from Kuomintang Party, which eventually took over Taiwan.
I need to quickly ask you that American question. Is it a possibility that the US could get involved very quickly?
Yeah, no one wants war at this point, right? Because the Americans are heading into elections. The Filipinos know that the Americans have hesitance, and also they don't want to compromise their ties with China. And also China is not in the mood. That's why they're still using gray zone activities. So the challenge for the Philippines is how to leverage its alliance with the United States to dissuade China from using things short of an armed attack, which would invoke the Mutual Defense Treaty. That's where the Philippines is lacking strategy. And that's where it has to do something about it and move forward with whether diplomatic or military countermeasures.
OK, we'll see what happens, certainly, in the coming days. For the moment, thanks so much for joining us from Manila.
Pleasure.